Under neon lights so cold they hum, shadows of scales where whispers come. A world of emeralds and tales untold, chasing the warmth in a world so cold. Happy basins we rise and glow, charmed roses stories the world should know. Emerald dreams in a twilight sky, together we thrive as the days go by. Amy speaks with a voice so kind, spreading the knowledge to ease the mind. Through winding paths, scales and lore, a brighter world we all explore. Happy basins we rise and glow, charmed roses stories the world should know. Emerald dreams.
Greetings! Welcome to our Happy Basins Podcast. It's so nice to have everybody here. Synergy, I know I'm saying that right, Synergy. Thanks for listening in while you work there. And Gabriel, I sure hope you got your handle fixed. Guys, we are here today with Mike from Mike's Monitors. And Mike is not only an expert at keeping monitor lizards, but our monitors lizards, you're going to have to correct me on that if I'm wrong. But also, Mike keeps emerald tree boas. And we have so many great things to talk about, naturalistic habitats, and how to keep our animals feeling like they're in nature. Mike.
Hi, Amy.
Hi. And Mike and I are friends. So this isn't.
We are friends.
Like it has been with my other guest. Mike and I do know each other, and we've had some great conversations. And we've actually have a conversation lately, but we both just keep getting busy, and time goes by so fast.
Man, you're not kidding, and I'm glad you bring that up. So I'll walk you through that story. I remember I was going to tell you.
Yes, before he starts, let me tell you guys what he's going to talk about here. I made a post and I said that Mike had this amazing huge litter of 15 emerald tree boa babies. And Mike is going to correct me on that statement.
Well, it's not that you need correcting, but
hey, it's a good correction.
Well, you know what? I like I said, back in the day when I was a younger man, I bred rainbow boas and a lot of colubrids, mainly North American desert rat snakes. So, like, these are the first time I bred emerald tree boas. And my big female gave me 17 live. One had drowned in the way I keep them over the water. One had drowned that way. And so actually the first, when I woke up in the morning, there was, I found 15 live, one dead in the water, and 8 slugs, right? So I set them all up, and then 2 days later, Amy, this is crazy story. 2 days later, I was in the other part of my basement where I keep like my bowline eye pythons and stuff like that. And I was in there, and I was sitting in front of an Okatee corn snake I have on a baker's rack. You know, the metal baker's rack with the little wire that kind of goes like a W. It's, you know, and I was feeding the Okatee corn snake, and I was, you know, when this happens to you, it's like surreal. So I'm sitting there, I fed the corn snake, and I was like, what's that baby emerald doing on the baker's rack? So that I found 2 days later, one had gotten out of the cage, and it made its way all the way across my basement, and it was actually in the cold room of the other part of Mike's monitor. So that was really weird, but it was a great find. That was cool. But so there was 17 live, 1 drowned, and 8 slugs. So that was the total count on the first breeding I've ever done.
26 babies inside of her. Unbelievable. And when you found that other one, I have a kind of similar situation. One of mine got out onto my ceiling vines when I was completely taking a video of the babies. I didn't even realize and found it later. And I kept counting over and over again to make sure I didn't have an extra one. But you did have an extra one.
and so literally when that one came out of Mama, it got itself situated and made its way out of the cage. And I had no idea. 2 days later, I found a beautiful little red-orange little neonate sitting on a baker's rack in the other room. I was freaked out, but thank you, Jesus.
Yes.
So,
and you said you found 2 more. Was the other one in the enclosure?
Yeah. Well, no, it was. It perished in the water. It drowned.
Oh, that's the one that you found. That was the second one you found 2 days later. I see.
No. So there was only one that escaped on me. I knew I had the 16, but one had died. And then the 17th was found 2 days later in the other part of my basement, which, is crazy because I don't have any like your house. You have the vines everywhere. So I have no idea how it made it from, it's probably about, I would say a good 45, 50 feet to get into the other room, and the doors are closed. There's, nothing hanging off the ceiling. So I have no idea how it made it into that room. But yeah, I found it all coiled up. It was perfectly happy sitting on the baker's rack. And of course, when I went to get him, he was snapping at me. So I knew he was good and healthy. I put him in with the rest. They shed. I separated them, and I, offered him food over, I don't know. It took him probably about, the first time, it's crazy. So Warren Booth is the guy who mentored me in my emeralds. He's a great guy, and I love the guy. So he had told me, you got to feed them hopper mice. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, wow, they're not that big, Warren. He goes, trust me, hopper mice. So I had gotten pinky mice, and I put them in there, and nobody ate the first couple days. Nobody would eat them. And I called Warren. I'm like, hey, Warren. He goes, what, you're hard of hearing? I'm like, what? He goes, I told you, hoppers. And I'm like, man, it just seems so big of a prey item for him. He said, trust me, Mike, get the hoppers. So I got the hoppers. I put one, after they've shed, of course. And I put one in each little, hold on, let me walk you over there. Is it okay if I do that?
Yeah.
I'm going to walk you over there and show you how I set up my babies.
Absolutely.
So, hold on a second. I'm challenged big time. So I set them up. Golly. So I set them up pretty much how Warren told me to. I kind of improvised and made my own rack. So you'll turn this light on so you can see. Can you see like that?
Oh, yes. Look at that.
So these are all just little, I don't know, like these are, what's the name of that company?
Embryo tubs.
Yes, these are Cambro tubs, and these are like for, I don't know, salad dressings or something like that. So, I put them all in here, and my friend of mine had 3D printed me the little ladders that I use, and I put a hopper mouse in each of the little Cambro can things, and slowly but surely they all started eating. I didn't have any muss or fuss with them. Once I used hoppers, they all started eating. They ate regularly, and man, they flew off the shelf. I wish I had about 100 of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
those pinkies don't give off much heat, do they?
Well, I don't think I think the way Warren had described it to me, it's like the pinkies just kind of shiver on the bottom, where when you put a hopper in there, it's moving, it's climbing the ladders, it's it's trying to get out. And they nailed them all. It took they didn't all eat the first night, but over the course of I think it was about 8 days, they all finally ate. And I had none that were troublesome. They all continually ate and shed. And like I say, when I was confident that they were strong and they would live on their own and shipping and everything, they flew off the shelf like hotcakes. So
I bet.
yeah.
Did you have any patternless? Was your patternless emerald tree boa? If you guys haven't seen it, if you didn't see it in my post that I made, wow, what a spectacular specimen.
Yeah, I could show that too if it's okay.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so that pairing, I'll show you the pair. So that pairing was what I call patternless, but the Emerald Tree Monitor Mafia, they were like, no, that's not patternless. So I what do I know? I'm a monitor guy, right? So this literally has about 9 white dots on it, and that's it. There's no other pattern, and it's so that, can you see that?
Yes. Wow.
So that's my male. He's the one that fathered all those babies.
Did you get any babies with his co-dominant trait?
No, I did not. They were all patterned. They all had some patterning on them. And then from my understanding, which I really don't know, I'm not a big genetic guy, but, I guess there was a possibility that over time they may lose the pattern. I don't really know. And here's the big female.
Wow. And she just had those babies. That was just like less than a year ago, right?
No, that was about a year ago. So,
okay. So she looks good. Did she eat it all when she was gravid, when she was pregnant?
Well, no, she didn't, but she's a big girl. I mean, she's very big. So, I don't handle none of my animals. So it's not like I could pull her out and measure her. Mm-hmm. So, then, okay, let me get to this real quick. So here's my absolutely patternless male. Nobody can dispute that.
Oh, you do have 2 of them.
Can you see that male?
How old is he?
Well, and then here's an anaconda female that he's breeding. He's already bred to her 9 times. I believe she's gravid, and I'm hoping to get a litter out of her soon. I've had him for 4 years now, and he was already through his ontogenic color change when I got him. So I would imagine he was, 6-8 months old when I got him. So he's close to 5 years old.
Nice. Well, I hope I'm on the list for one of those babies.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I don't
Definitely.
know if you got a chance or if any of you guys out there saw my latest post on Facebook that Jeremy and Jesse Moore are sending me a co-dominant gene patternless male.
Nice.
With my 2 northerns that I have. So I'm super excited about that. She left FedEx tonight. So he will be here in the morning.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yes.
Congrats on that.
Thank you.
They're amazing. So, who doesn't love an emerald tree boa? I mean, since we're reptile people and, that's probably one of the pinnacle species that, any person would want in their collection. And I really happened upon these. I've always wanted them since I was a kid. I'm not much of a python guy, so I really love boas and all the different boas. Always wanted emerald tree boas, and that male, that really nice patternless male, kind of fell into my lap. So Josh Alder at Empire Exotics, when he vends shows in my area, he stays overnight at my house while he's traveling. So he was here one night, and I told him, I'm like, hey, nephew, you getting tired? He goes, oh, yeah. I'm like, all right, we'll go upstairs. The room's ready for you. And he went upstairs, and I started rifling through his box. And I came across that male, and I originally got that male, and I was going to sell it to MJ. And he balked. He didn't want it. And he balked. He didn't want it. And then while I was downstairs in the basement setting it up, I hear the footsteps coming down my stairs, and it was Josh. And my lovely wife, who I adore and love, she had bought that male we had originally thought was a female. So he brought down a northern male to pair it up with. So it was actually when they became mature, I noticed the normal patterned northern. It had some scratches on it. Really, real. They weren't like serious. Yeah, and it was two. So it turns out it was two males. So I sent that male off to Warren Booth, and then my friend Monterangam in Miami, he sent me this anaconda female, and man, these babies are going to be so nice because it's a really nice emerald anaconda phase too. So I'm hopeful, and like I said, I seen him lock up with her this year 9 times. I have recorded. So I'm hoping she's going to give me babies. Now, the other female last year that gave me all of those babies, Warren was real adamant about pulling the male out, giving her a break. And again, I trust Warren's position and knowledge very much. However, I don't have, I'm a monitor guy, so I don't have a bunch of, extra cages to cut animals out. I keep them together 24/7. So, I noticed her this year starting to put on a real good swell. So, I'm like, wow, could it be? And he said, well, if she's in good shape, there's chances are it'll be okay if she is gravid. And so she's swolled up. She's huge. And I'm hoping maybe I get another litter out of her, but I think theirs are going to be later than these two here. It was a freak. I mean, like I say, I keep them together. And literally when I first got these, I had the whole, and trust me, when I say this, I'm not insinuating anybody's bad people. I'm just saying when I got these, the Emerald Tree Boa Mafia, just the community. They came at me because basically I keep them like I do my monitors. The only difference is they're perching, and I lower instead of having 75 watt lights over them, I have 50 watts over them. My monitors get 75 watts. So I heat them from above with halogen heat lamps. The whole bottom of their tub is full of water that's heated and filtered. And it just maintains great humidity, and it's very easy to clean. They're carefree. I have never had and knock on wood, I've never had any regurg or shedding problems. It's just been fantastic keeping these animals.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice once you have a litter and your animals are healthy for a nice extended time that the mafia kind of settles down on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's funny, because when I posted the video of all the babies in the cage, the community, I'm not going to say mafia no more because that's kind of sounds derogatory. Okay. See, I'm Italian, so that's a pride thing. But the community, then they reached out to me and said, how do you heat the water? And, now they're asking all kinds of questions. And I'm glad to share information with people. I don't hold none. I want everyone to be happy and succeed. So yes. I'm happy to share. And like I say, I don't really even know what I'm doing with them. They've been simple to keep here, even the babies. And if I could share knowledge and help somebody, that's what I'm all about.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite things about you is the way that you keep your enclosures natural and let your animals feel like they're in the wild. Your monitor enclosure with the waterfall and the way you show them doing all of those things, it just looks exactly like they're in nature.
Yep. The funny thing about it is, since I was a little boy, I take as much pride in caring for my animals as I do in their setups, because like, I don't want to look at, I'm definitely not a drawer guy. So if that was the standard, I'd I don't know what I'd keep, but it wouldn't be snakes in drawers. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I like to see them. I like seeing them interact with their habitat, and I feel really good when I pull off, even since I was a little kid, when I pull off a really beautiful habitat that the animals, they interact with. They're actually using, the plant coverage, the water features, all the basking and climbing and hiding opportunities I give them. I get great joy in that as much as my animals themselves.
Yes, I definitely feel that.
Yeah. Here's a funny story for you. I had contacted you a couple of weeks ago, and I asked you for some in situ photos. And as we both know, Ron Rundo, who's a fantastic guy. I love that guy. He's such an artist. And he does the best work out there, for real. So I was looking at his work, and there's a lot of smooth buttress trees and very smooth. And I copied him. I've done some builds, and I copied his work. Of course, mine don't look like his. His stuff it's like it's alive. My stuff looks good, but
this is one of his pieces right here. If you guys can see it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is just amazing.
You can't see the whole thing, but it's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's so anybody who's interested in some really killer naturalistic work, look up Snakescapes by Ron Rondo. He's the man.
Gabriel, can you put that in the comments? Snakescapes.com. Thank you.
So what I had contacted you about is I wanted to see what they're climbing on in the wild naturally, because I was always under the impression that it was, like for my monitors, it was always, they didn't like bare trees. They liked bark and stuff that they can grip and hold. And when I was a young guy and I used to keep all my rainbow boas and Colombian boas and Suriname boas, they always preferred like driftwood that was debarked and very smooth. So I had built, I had built artificial buttress tree vines and branches, and I copied Ron's work. So it was very smooth. And so those branches I put in there, they lasted about a year, right? So they started falling apart underneath the weight of that big girl. I mean, she's huge. And so they started breaking up, and I had to repair them, and I was getting tired of repairing them every week, So that's when I contacted you, and I wanted to see some in situ photos to see what they're actually on in the wild. And they were valuable photos for me because I went out in my front yard and got them all kinds of branches that they just love. So when I had dismantled their cage, now they've been in there and on those branches for a couple of years. So when I had dismantled that cage, I just went with the PVC, the heat bent and painted. It looks very, very nice. However, they would not give up those branches that I made for them. I made them out of Zoopoxy, so it's kind of it's definitely not like PVC. And once they get their scent on it, it'll hold just like a real branch. It'll hold their smell and their scent. And they did not want to let go of those branches. So finally, when I coaxed them off, the male went up and they would smell my new PVC branches. And they were like, they were cringed. They did not, they were mad. They were not happy with me. So I'm like, you know what? They got to get used to it. These other ones are in here with PVC and they do fine on them. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So I came down the next morning and my big girl, she was coiled up on a shelf, not on the PVC at all. The male he was on a PVC. He was good. But man, she protested for like 2 nights. She would just sit on the shelf. So that's when I contacted you. You showed me them photos, and I went out in my front yard here, and I got some natural branches with lichen on them, and they love them. They love them now. So I find it it's expensive. The stuff that I use to make my habitats, it gets pretty expensive, and things aren't real good right now for everybody. So rather than going out and buying more of that product, I just went out in my front yard and got a bunch of stuff, and I realize now how much they love it that I'm not going to buy that stuff anymore. There's no reason for me to, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I get vines. I save trees by unwrapping all the vines, and then I power wash them, dry them, and shellac them. And I have no idea what kind of vines they are. They're all over this house, and I use them for all the different animals. And by the time I put that copious amount of shellac on them, there's nothing that matters in there.
Right.
And I also want to interject real quick when Mike's talking about the pictures that I sent him. For those of you who don't know, I've spent a lot of time in the Amazon rainforest looking for emerald tree boas in the wild. So he wanted pictures of different emeralds and different trees. And like I always say, if you've ever heard me talk, you've heard me say that we don't find emerald tree boas on just trees. They're in trees that are filled with vine systems hanging down 100 feet, 50 feet to 100 feet high, these huge vine systems. So that's where we find the emeralds.
Yep. And they're totally suited for their habitat. Like, I didn't know this about them until I started working with them. At swimming, they suck. Crawling on a flat surface, they're not so good at it. But however, you put them up in a vine, a tree, and they're magical. They do their thing. That's where they belong.
Yes, that is for sure. It's just beautiful the way I have my vines set up in these enclosures of 5 to 6 foot vines in every enclosure. And they just rest pieces of their body and wrap their tails around the little tiny pieces and their heads resting over here. I love to watch them act like they're in nature.
Yeah. I got a female coming eye over there. The lights are getting ready to go out, so she's protesting my loud mouth. So what are you going to do?
Time for bed. So when go ahead.
Go on. No,
you're working with all of these natural environments and you're talking about all the water you use and everything else, how do you maintain the sterile environment, mostly, and keeping everything natural?
Well, you know what? So I guess this is probably why the community, the emerald tree boa community, maybe gets mad at me or not. I'm not saying they're mad at me, but I guess I'm showing them they don't understand. I guess I'm showing them something that I think a lot of people are afraid to do because my cages are not sterile. Yeah, my cages are not sterile. I keep them over filtered, heated water. And when I rain on them, they poop in the water, and I take a fish net and I scoop the poops out right away. And when I change my water, probably about once a month, I have to completely change the water out. And I guess people. I think I have a hard time when people go with that whole sterile environment thing. It's like, man, oh man, these things come from the wild, and mine are all wild caught too. So, I'm sure where they're coming from is a heck of a lot more dirty, for lack of knowing what you'd say, opposite of sterile. So, while my cages are probably more sterile than the wild, they're definitely not as sterile as somebody who keeps them on one of them diaper pads or, I just, if I had to do that, if I had to keep my animals on diapers and stuff, I wouldn't keep them. If the way I keep them now was detrimental to their health and I had to keep them over a diaper, I'd just stick with my monitors who don't give a crap about anything,
That's kind of what I say when they all told me I had to quit handling them. And I want to say something I did want to make a point of here is Mike is one of my friends who doesn't agree with all of the handling that we do, but is still my friend and still supports and loves us, what we do here at Happy Basins. But definitely a lot of feedback on all kinds of things that we do that are different, but we're broadening the perspective. We're still keeping the old school, what everybody's learned about temperatures and humidity and all sorts of great foundations, but we're just expanding the perspective of what these animals are capable of as far as interaction.
Absolutely. Yeah. I now, as far as interactions go, I got to give it to you, Amy. I'm not as brave as you, and I ain't taking a bite from one of these things. So I'm hands off with them. So big props to you for not being afraid to maybe take a hit. And I see yours are all well socialized and they're not biting you, but I'm afraid.
Some scary ones,
I don't want to get bit by one of these.
The scary ones are not ambassadors, but they do exist in this house.
I gotcha. So you do have a few that you're leery of.
Oh, yes. I do actually. At this point, I have 2 wild-caught northerns. One of them's becoming much more tame. One of them is not having anything to do with it. And then I have my girl Isis. And even though she's been with us all these years and I can handle her, certain people can handle her, but I can't just put her on anybody like I can with. I have 8 ambassadors in here, and I have a few that are not. But I handled my baby since the first baby, Peo, since she was born, and she eats, and she's just so healthy and strong. I couldn't keep my hands off.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You have a knack for these animals. So, I have a friend, Catherine Brown, she's like a reptile whisperer. I don't know if you know her, but she can take she's also a monitor girl. She can take like some of the most aggressive monitors, and just through her attitude and her disposition, I like to call it the energy we exude. She gets these animals just to calm down and not bite. And, I tell people, like with my monitor lizards, I could handle them all. However, it's not handling like, you grab them. They'll come to me and they pretty much handle me. They walk on me. And but I tell people when I'm trying to help people socialize monitor lizards, I tell them, hey, look, dude, before you go down with your animals, and I say down because I'm down. I said, when you go down with your animals, before you go down, do one of them ohms or whatever that stuff is called, yoga or whatever. I said, just, your kid's sassing you back. Get that out of your head. Your wife is yelling at you. Get that out of your head. You're yelling at your wife. Just clear your energy. And once you clear your energy, then you go down and socialize your animals. Because believe it or not, the psyche of these animals, it was always known in dogs, like, if you're aggressive to your dog, he's going to be aggressive to you. It's the same with these people. I mean, it's started to become more and more popular now, but these animals are highly intelligent and they pick up on your energy. If you're angry, they feel a certain kind of way about that. If you're calm and assertive, they pick up on that too, and that relaxes them as well. But if you're in a big ball of tension, man, that ain't going to work out good for you. So clear all that shit before you start playing with your animals.
Yes. I actually had a really good example of that happen to me one time. My animals have been on lots of podcasts. Anytime I'm a guest on a podcast, I always have a bunch of them, holding them and let them all out everywhere. Well, I was on one podcast and I had put it on my Facebook that I was going to do this podcast, and my mother-in-law and my neighbor's granddaughter and other grandchildren of another friend, everybody's watching, and the podcast starts and they're like, effing shit, effing this, smoking a bong and everything. And I just got really nervous. I got on my computer as fast as I could saying, warning, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And Isis had never acted like that before and never has again, but she was snapping and just super aggressive. So I know she felt that angst that I had at that moment. And I was sweating. She really, really felt it.
Yep. Like I have when people come and tour my room and they want to see everything, I generally, I won't handle my animals. I have a few that are, like over the top exceptional. Like most of them all, they're used to this mug. I don't know why, but yeah, they think this is a good thing, if you can believe that. But only my lizards and my mom thinks that. So
We know that's not true.
well, and you too, Amy. So I had one guest in the house, and Kingpin, my big male sulfur water monitor, who is literally a puppy dog. I was calling him out of the cage, and normally he just come running. So he comes out, and all of a sudden he stopped, and he looked over my shoulder because I was on the edge of the cage, which in a seating position, and the guy was standing in my room. And he looked over my shoulder, and he just backed into his hide a little bit, and he just sat there. And I'm like, come on, boy, what's the matter? And I realized, I was like, this animal does not like this guy. He must have had that bad juju or something. You know what I mean? And I just trusted my animal. I said, okay, you don't want to come out. I said, hey, it ain't going to happen today, bro. And we just went on to the next animal. But, you know, if you know how to read your animals and you understand what they're saying to you, they absolutely talk to you. They absolutely tell you what they want and what they need. We're not always smart enough to pick up on it. However, I think over the years, I've kind of grown accustomed to speaking monitor lizards. So, yeah, I communicate with them. They know me. I know them. We're all good.
Absolutely. I feel that for sure. You just can, their body language. And I had another incident very similar to what you just said as well. Somebody came over here to my house, and my iguana Zaza just started shaking her head, and her little dewlap fluffed up, and she never does that. And so that day I'd never even asked her to come down. Usually I'll offer her treats and she'll come right down. And I said the same thing you said. I said, oh, she's just going to be in her own space today, but we can look at her.
Yep. Yeah, so, exactly.
And I raised German Shepherds for decades, and I definitely 100% see very similar attributes as I did with the Shepherds. They're just much more expressive. And that's why I call Zaza our mascot, because she shows us really how these guys feel.
Right. And it's I don't know. I don't know if this is the right word, amazing. So it's amazing to me. Like, I've been doing this stuff since I was a little boy. And like I said, my friend Catherine Brown, since she was a little girl, she would portray her, you know, probably not the best situation as far as like home life or whatever. And I don't want to get into that, but a friend of mine who's my co-host on my podcast, she also does an online magazine called Soar. Jen, don't kill me. I'm sorry. So it's Soar magazine, and it's an acronym. It stands for I forget, Jen. I'm sorry.
So look it up and put it in the comments, Gabriel.
Yeah. So Soar magazine, you could, look that up on social media and like Facebook and stuff. But she does a real great thing in it where it's an online magazine. And, because of my past, a drug addicted, person who I've been clean for 10 years. And, Bill Stewart, he's a clinical psychologist, and Jen has had issues with PTSD through 911, and Catherine Brown. So that's why I wanted to say that. But it's amazing that like the whole world now is starting to understand that these are sentient animals. They understand and they know emotions and feelings, and they're not just these blank-eyed things that exist. They have feelings and emotions, and Tom Crutchfield is another guy who really opened my eyes to like the actual, what he calls it, Umwelt, which is a German word for, I don't know, I guess to break it down, it's like, an ant sees the world, a half inch off the ground, and then a spider sees it a little more because it's, bigger, and so on and so forth. So once you realize this, how animals see the world, you can imagine, an ant walking on the ground sees people at a parade or whatever. They're like, what the heck? You know what I'm saying? So when you understand the psychology of these animals, and that's another thing I really love about what we do is, to understand and really to interact with these animals on their level it's like I would imagine probably like knowing sign language with a deaf person or communicating with somebody with autism or something. It's not the same as us. However, it doesn't take much to figure out what they're saying to you and how you need to say to them. It's just it's a whole nother
Chris, put that up there again, Chris. The outreach, access, and recovery.
Yep.
Thanks, Gabriel.
No. It's SOAR is like
SOAR.
SOAR. Yeah, it's like, gosh, man, she's gonna kill me.
She's not.
She's gonna. Oh, trust me, she's gonna. You don't know Jen. She's gonna kill me. But no.
Support of all reptiles. Support
what is
of
it?
all reptiles.
Support of all reptiles. There you go, Jen. Amy saved me. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Gabriel, for trying to get that.
Yes, thank you very much. So,
excellent work, Jen.
yes.
Thank you for your work.
Yep. And the magazine that's coming out, this next edition, is it's all about mental health. It's all about drug addiction and how these animals help us and how we, like Bill Stewart is a clinical psychologist and he uses animals, reptiles, to break through to some of these kids that are actually some are nonverbal and they actually talk to him. And, then he relays to the parents, little Jimmy said this. And they're like, no, little Jimmy don't talk. Well, today he did. He talked about a turtle. So, it's very good. So anyone who's listening, when that podcast comes out or when that SOAR magazine comes out, I will put it on my page. And if you can all remember that, support of all reptiles, you check that out. It's a great episode because, a lot of people in the country these days, it's a different world we live in now. So it may be able to help somebody.
Very nice. Chris, maybe you can get Jen on our Happy Basins podcast. And also my friend Shira Loa also does snake therapy. A lot of interesting data. I mean, real data and case studies, groups of data, just really good stuff that these reptiles can trigger so much emotion that these nonverbal children and people are able to communicate about their excitement. It's incredible.
Right. And I think Bill Stewart is a genius for doing that for these kids because, when you think about it, you got a kid who's real shy and he hides in the corner. He's afraid of, saying the wrong thing or whatever. He brings out a tortoise and the tortoise will be walking around. He'll pass his hand over and they see the turtle tuck his head in a shell. And he's like, see, it's okay. If you do that, you have a defense mechanism for a reason. It's just very, very interesting stuff. And I love it that our beloved reptiles are actually starting to help people and maybe they always have, but it's more in the forefront now. So,
yes, we have a lot more collaboration, and collaboration is power.
Yep, absolutely.
And do you find that your monitors have a lot more? I'm going to say, I know just with my iguana has a lot more ability to communicate than the emeralds do. But now that I'm really getting to know the emeralds like we're talking about, I see much more communication than I did in the beginning now that I'm learning the little.
Well, you know what? I had this discussion. I forget who I had this. I had this discussion with Dr. Zach Lugman at the Reptile Talks just 2 weeks ago in Anaheim, California. And, he was saying about his talk was on false water cobras and, how they read their environment and, how they're very in tune with their environment. And, and I see that with monitor lizards, there's sight, sound, a lot of ways they communicate and interact with each other and, people, that I asked him, I said, hey, doctor, is there any correlation between high intelligence and, animals with higher metabolism? And of course, we're talking about reptiles, not, mammalians. So he said, yeah, there probably is, because, he says that's not to say an ambush predator is dumb by any sense of the mean. They figured out a way to survive in their world by ambush predator. But when you have an animal like, monitor lizards or colubrids and high metabolism animals, they have to seek food and seek mates. And in doing that, they run across a lot more dangers and situations. So that doesn't mean sedentary predators like our, boas and ambush predators are any less intelligent. They just use it in a different way,
Yes.
It's a different survival mechanism.
A totally another relatable thing I have to my iguana is that when she's up on her perch, she doesn't want to come down. And I have to do it very gently and never grab her and do it all a certain way. And once she's down, she's perfectly fine. And it's the same way with these guys. Initially, there's that little piece of lizard brain that says, hold on. And then once they're gently taken out, they're a whole different animal. That lizard brain, I just call it, little piece, just goes away and they get in a different mode. Absolutely.
And by you understanding that is how you've progressed to where you have with Jaja or Zaza.
Zaza.
Okay. So, for example, most people would go and want to interact with Zaza, and they would reach, and she, at first, she's not bold and confident, so she's weary, and, a lot of times people will give up at that point. But you gave up on yourself and that animal, because if you just push the animal past its little comfort point, sooner or later they're going to realize there's no threat, there's no danger. As a matter of fact, it's beneficial to come out and explore. And like the reason I'm so adamant about socializing my captive born monitors before I sell them is because I want, we're not doing these animals any favor. We're taking them from their natural habitat and we're putting them in captivity. And that's the least we can do, is to, work with their brain so of course they're captives, but so that they're not nervous, scared, flighty. We want them bold, confident, and secure. So if we do that with our animals, it's a much better captive situation when they're, bold and confident than nervous and scared. So that's one of my main goals here at Mike's Monitors, is to, when I release animals to the public, I want them to be as social with me and my family, me and my son. And then, of course, they're highly intelligent. So it's going to take some time for you to continue that socialization process, because they're used to this. They're used to my voice. They're used to the smells in my house, and they're very calm and confident with me. However, you got to have your own breakthrough once you get your animals. So anybody who gets any of my animals, I'm there for life. I'm your guy for life. I will help you in any way, shape, or form. And I don't care if you get mad at me and yell at me and call me names. I'm there for the animals. So have at it.
When you release an animal, adopt an animal out to a beginner, you have a very advanced system. You know your balance between, like you said, you don't have everything sterile, but a beginner would probably need to work a little more on that end. What kind of things do you tell people to do differently that you do?
Well, so, I try to be, I'm trying to be humble, because I am very proud of the work that I've done, and I'm very proud of this socialization caging system that I've developed over the years. And I'd like everyone to think, oh, that guy's a genius, but it didn't. Mike's Monitor socialization caging system did not start off as a socialization caging system. It started off as, I produce a lot of monitors. I have a lot of babies, and there was one point early on when I had 50 hatchling Mertens monitors. So I'm like, I can't keep these in the traditional way. It's just gonna, they'll pollute their enclosures so fast. So what I did was I decided I'm going to keep them over water in a very simplistic setup with a drain, so I don't have to get in there and mess with them. And I put 25 captive-born Mertens in my socialization caging system, which started off as ease of maintenance. And then 25 were in a normal setup with substrate on the bottom and a water dish, which is terrible. It's not terrible, but there's a better way. And I've discovered it, and I really push it hard out there because it works so well. So the cage with the 25 in my socialization cage, I noticed that in like a couple of weeks, they were no longer flighty and scared. They were bold and confident. They'd jump in the water, they'd swim to the front of the glass and literally eat out of my fingers, like within just a couple of weeks. And the 25 that were in the traditional monitor setup, it took months to socialize those animals. So when I started thinking about it, I'm like, why is that? Why is that? And then, my lizard brain started kicking in, and I'm thinking, okay, the only difference is they're over water. And when in the beginning, when you'd go up to the cage, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them would jump off the very simple setup with a cork tube and just a one little spittly plant just for security needs. However, the cork tube that I use, I drill 2-inch holes all through it. It looks like Swiss cheese. So they could bask on top of it. They could bask in it, crepuscular basking or out in open basking. And I can monitor their health without going in there and pulling them out. And that's really stressful for a baby lizard. They're on the menu for everything. So I quickly found out that the water, them living over the water, meets their security needs like 100%. So when they're nervous and scared, they jump in the water. So I'm very persistent. So when they jumped in the water, I would just sit there, and then 1, 2, 3 would pop up, and I'd offer food on the tongs. And before you know it, they were in the water. They were secure. They felt me as no threat. So now to further test this out, and again, it was pretty inadvertent. Okay, that worked really well for hatchling monitors. So when I got my Varanus togianus, which are wild caught adults, and they are maniacs. When I got them from my friend, I said, "Why would you want to sell these?" And he goes, "Well, I'll be honest with you. In the monitor world, there's a lot of this. It's called empty cage syndrome, where your animals are so nervous and scared that they hide. They just always hide, and you're looking at an empty cage all the time. Well, I don't want my animals like that."
Emeralds don't get Emeralds don't get any place to hide typically.
Right. Well, they're cryptic, and they're they're sitting and they're hoping that you don't really notice them amongst the greenery. So, they have, again, that doesn't make them less intelligent. They just go about their security in a different way. So when I got these monitors, I thought to myself, you know what? I wonder if I built one of my socialization caging systems on a larger scale, if this would work for these really nervous, wild caught animals that were, basically stolen from the wild. So I set up a larger version of Mike's Monitor socialization caging system. And if you look on my Instagram, you'll see these Varanus togianus, which there's, animals have fight and flight. Togianus have no flight. They're all fight. They ain't afraid of nothing. They will literally rip your face off. So when I put them into Mike's Monitor socialization caging system, when I that was probably the year you were at Tinley with me. I got them that Thursday. My friend Steve came from Colorado, bring me the Togies, and I put them in the socialization caging system, and then I went to Tinley. Now when I'm in Tinley, I stay down there. So for 3 days, these Varanus togiensis had nobody peeking in at them. They had 3 days to get used to their plain basic setup with the water. So when I went home, I went into their cage and they jumped off the logs and they went into the water, and I sat there and they popped their head up. They seen me and they'd go back down. So here's where persistence and patience comes in. So I sat there and it would pop its head up. And now I'd notice it doing like, this, side eyeing me and really like checking me out. And so then I went and got some defrosted birds and I passed them in there and they would grab them. And then as soon as I pulled my arm out, they would let it go. I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out. So I'd take the bird, I'd pass it to them. They'd grab the bird. Now I just left my arm in there with the tongs. And after a few seconds, they just started gulping the bird down. They threw it back, and I'd pull my arm out and I'd give them another one. So literally after about 2 months of this, I got them out on my arms, and they're very bold and secure. And it makes my heart happy to know that these animals aren't frightened for their lives anymore. They're very bold and confident. And for what we think, and for them, they're enjoying captivity as best as they can, probably in part to the socialization system.
Yes, beautiful. Hey, Mike, don't go anywhere. We're going to just take a really quick break just for just a second. And when we get back, we're going to talk more about how providing a natural environment, being patient and consistent can really help us socialize our animals. So, Chris, do you have a word for us? Yeah, I love this conversation.
Good.
Making our animals comfortable. And I know Chris is going to get that put up as soon as he gets a chance. Definitely consistency is a big part of that.
Yeah. Just so you know, 7:00, my lights are going to go off down here. So I am going to move. I'm going to move out of here so I have some light, but it'll take me a minute to get there.
Okay, perfect. Then, Chris, whenever you get ready to go ahead and play that bit from our sponsor. It sounds really cool. Chris was telling me about some coins with the network name on it. Chris's network is called Untamed and Unhinged Reptile Network. And he produces this podcast that I have to do absolutely nothing for, except chat with my cool reptile counterparts.
Well, you know what, Amy? I got to say you're an asset to the community. What you do is great stuff. So you just keep doing you.
Thanks, Mike. I'm really grateful to have you as a mentor and an example, because it's just really nice to have a fellow person who feels so passionately about providing the natural environments. And you say you're a hands-off guy, and I know you are with a lot of your animals, but you've just talked a lot about socialization, and it's just a beautiful thing. I think these guys, like we talked about, they do have a mind, and they think, they're inquisitive, they're curious about things. It's just amazing. Yes. All right, Chris, he is going to play our little break here. So let's see it, Chris. Fabulous. Thank you to all of those amazing sponsors. We really appreciate all of the support that we have here at Unhinged and on Untamed and Unhinged Reptile Podcast Network.
Nice.
Mike, I do want to get right back to that conversation about socializing these animals and the importance of letting them use their brains to explore. And in the wild, they have so many stressors, and the stressors that we provide, by interacting with them, like you said, eventually they come to the point where they see us as no threat, and they do acclimate to us. In most cases,
Yes.
pretty. But
Well,
the
I
big
know.
consistency,
Yeah, go on.
consistency is huge.
Yeah. So I know you had said, I don't know if we were on air at the time, you had said that I'm hands off. I am hands off. However, socialization is a must, because when I do have to take my animals to a vet, I don't want to have to stress them out and wrestle with them. So I get them to the point where they trust me enough to come to me, and they'll let me put them in a bin or a bag or a box, whatever the case may be. I'm talking about my monitors now.
Yes.
So that's very important too. However, I am a breeder. So, putting a leash on them and letting them walk around my backyard, or taking them to a fair or reptile show, that's not my thing. So that, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but as a breeder, yeah, you don't want your valuable breeders out like that. There's anything could really happen. So, and again, there's nothing wrong with it, but for my situation, it's strictly hands off.
Do you have any enrichment outside of their enclosures that you do?
Uh, um,
I know
yeah,
your stuff has so much enrichment inside.
yes. Yeah. I guess, like, you can only imagine if you were stuck in a box your whole life. Like for example, your room, that's enrichment for them just coming out of their enclosure and getting into that room. Same with my monitors when they come out and interact with other people, or, wander my room and then go back. So that's enrichment. But I use natural. All my dirt that I use I don't buy no dirt. All of my dirt comes from my in-laws' farm, and it's a crazy story. So, like, I collect oak leaves from their farm, and whenever when the monitor lizards start breaking down these oak leaves, it actually turns into a substrate. So, on my in-laws' farm, when I got with my wife, me and my wife have a long history, but it's only probably the past 9 or 10 years that we've been together like a couple. So it was about 30 years since the last time I was at their farm, and things in 30 years really changed. So when I got to their farm, her dad he took me out in his truck, and he was showing me it. It's 187 acres, so it's a huge farm. It's a horse farm. So we were going towards the back end of the property, like where there's the burn pile, and where they put like trees that fell that they can't use, like up here where I live in the woods of Wisconsin, the people, when you fell like an oak tree or a hickory tree or maple, really hard woods, not pine, what they do is they use it to burn in their houses, to heat their houses in the winter. And then, like, the stuff that's unusable, like small branches or bigger pieces, they run through a chipper. So basically they're making wood chips, and they put it all around their gardens and in their bushes, and it looks really nice. However, every year they gather up in the spring, they gather up all the old stuff, and they bring it all to my father-in-law's farm, and they throw it on this giant pile where it decays. So he was taking me around the farm, and I'm like, hey, oh, Jack, stop. So, he's like, okay. So he stops the car, and I run over to this pile of wood chips, hardwood chips, not pine or nothing, just real hardwood chips. And I jumped on the pile of hardwood chips and I smeared off the top layer and I got down into the stuff that was steaming and it was decomposing. And I held it up to my nose and it just smelled like the earth after a rain. It's just beautiful. It's literally forest floor. So that's what I use. And in that soil, you got natural springtails, you got millipedes, centipedes, isopods, and all kinds of other things that live in the dirt. So when I use my dirt, the dirt in all of my cages it's alive. It's an ecosphere in itself, my soil alone. And of course, uneaten food and lizard poop is what nourishes all those what I call workhorses. And it's just it's almost like a fish tank with a biological gravel bed. So it really works. Pardon?
And their shed skin too, along with their poop and leftover food.
Yep. Everything gets broken down. I remember many, many years ago, I had a peach throat monitor, and it was shortly before lights were going to go out, and I just heard it. He pooped on the substrate, and I was like, you know what? I'll pick that up in the morning. I was tired, so I went to bed. I came down in the morning right before lights were coming on, and the lights came on, and I knew the first thing I had to do was pick up that big pile of poop. So when the lights came on, I noticed the millipedes and the centipedes and the isopods, everything was scrambling like roaches when you turn the light on, and there was no more poop there. I was like,
fabulous.
This is beautiful. So that's why I've always used my own dirt. I don't buy no dirt. I use outside dirt.
Speaking of beautiful, I want to say hello to Steve Nelson from A Reptile I Am. Thanks for being here with us, Steve. He says hi to you too, Mike. You might not be able to see.
Yeah.
And Morelia.
I love that guy.
You all for being here.
Yep. Yes, thank you guys.
We just gather earth from down by the river, not for the emeralds, but for upstairs with the king snakes and the tortoises. All have that, what you said. They have the earwigs and roly-polies, all of that good stuff. And I have my king snake enclosures up there. You can open the doors and put your whole face in there, and all you smell is earth. And I haven't cleaned in there it's going on 2 years since I've even touched it.
Yep. Fortunately for me, a lot of the water monitors, and not just water monitors, but forest types, they'll generally poop in their water. So, other than what they hit on the soil that the workhorses clean up, when they poop in my water, everything's all on drain. So every day I drain everything, I rinse and then refill it. Simple.
Well,
it's very.
When you first set up that habitat you were talking about that you left for 3 days and you came to Tinley last year, I was worried for a bit because Larry, for those of you who don't know, Larry's my husband. He started watching everything that Mike was posting and showing it to me and talking about all the stuff that he could change the whole garage into this water feature for monitors. And I felt exhausted just thinking about it, but I knew if he wanted to do it. So I'm as much as amazing as that is a lot of work that you do with all of that. And if you guys haven't seen stuff, you could go to his Mike's Monitors Instagram or Facebook page and just look through his posts, his pictures and videos. It will take your breath away, seriously.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. And then like when I created my my Mertens habitat, that has a 300-gallon water feature on it, and I overkilled like filtering monitors that poop in the water, filtering their water. I'm going to tell you something right now. I've found over the years, like many, many years, that, you become a slave to that filter, cleaning it, because they quickly, they overload biologically your, any kind of filters that you could put on. I mean, if you had a filter like for the shed aquarium, or, a big, lots and lots of water, that may work. However, with any of the normal store bought, even the sand filters for swimming pools, they quickly become overloaded with biological waste, and you just become a slave to, instead of working with your animals, you're trying to keep their water clean. So I overkilled on my Merton setup. I have two giant Owasi Biomaster 850 thermos. So that actually, these filters actually heat the water as well as filter it. And I did that because, I never kept Mertens before. And I just assumed they're going to be pooping all over the water. So I put this overkill filtration on my water, and they don't poop in the water. They poop on the land. So I still got to clean it. It's a different situation. I don't have only their nest box is biological dirt. I have a bunch of ledges and stuff, and they poop all over them. So I have overkill on my water, and they don't poop in the water. But the other ones do poop in the water.
Well, all of my emeralds are potty trained, have me trained. And I just put them in the shower, and they poop on cue right into the bowl that I put under them. So yes, some of these animals love the water.
Yep, and I do love your your rain chamber. However, like I said, I don't want to get bit by one of those. So my whole cage is basically like a rain chamber. So when I do rain on them, I could see that, that load working its way towards the cloaca. And I mean, sometimes I'm not there when they poop in the water, and I just net it when I see it. But for the most part, if I rain on them, I could see them working their poop down, and I just put the net right underneath it, and I catch it before it even hits the water. It's a beautiful system.
Yes, it really is. Those animals have us trained.
Absolutely. We're trainable, though, Amy.
Yes,
Not everybody is.
When we want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you told us about a baby emerald appearing days later after they were born. And that is a pretty good quirky story of something that happened. What is one of the quirkiest things that have happened with your monitors?
Let me see some
escapes.
Well, I mean, when a monitor escapes, it's a whole different story. They're highly intelligent. I mean, basically, if you don't know what you're doing, like you said, our animals will train us. So if you keep your animals in a basement situation like I do, and all day long, you got a dog running around, you got the frying pan going, that, they smell all of this activity and they hear all of this activity. So what they quickly do is they hide daily, and then they come out at night, which is not good for a monitor lizard. So we inadvertently train them to vanish while we're active. And then when they hear no more noise, no more dogs barking or walking on the floor, then they come out. And unfortunately for monitor lizards, they're diurnal. So if you get them in a cycle like that, it's not good, because, they need the basking lamps. And if you keep your stuff on timers, when the lights go out is nighttime. So when your house is nice and quiet, they may want to come out and feed or bask or soak in the water, and, your lights aren't on and there's nobody there to feed them. So that's kind of not a good situation. So you got to be ahead of that as far as the socialization, because once you eliminate that fear, they become more confident and comfortable, and then their normal activities resume. So yeah, you can inadvertently screw your monitors up by daily activity. Mm-hmm. But as far as quirky things go, I could tell you. You want to hear a funny story? So
yes,
there was a time when I was breeding Varanus gilleni, which is It's a pygmy mulga monitor, like literally 6, 8 inches as an adult. So when I first hatched out my first ever clutch of those, you know, they were born in, let's see, where am I at here? So they're literally, you know, gosh, about an inch long. And, you know, they can get out of the tiniest little holes. So my first 3 that I hatched, I put them in a cage, and I came down in the morning all happy and proud. And I'm like, okay, I got to feed the little guys. So I went to feed them. And again, I have a socialization caging system for scrubland animals too. That's not water on the bottom. And I go to the cage, and I got my food and everything ready, and they're nowhere. I mean, they're tiny. And I'm like, okay, well, they got to be in here somewhere. And I'm looking around, and my heart just sank. All 3 of them got out of the cage. And yeah, and I mean, they're such good hiders. And like I said, you can condition them to where when they hear noises and activity, they kind of shut down, and then they come out when they don't hear all of that. So I was real worried that that was going to happen with them. However, you know, a tiny little animal like that is like impossible. So it was 2 days later, and I was walking into my reptile room, and I use one of them real tall deli cups for putting crickets in and shaking vitamins on them. And I walked another thing just like that little baby emerald. I'm like, what is that baby gillenite doing inside that cup? Well, I had left a few crickets in there, and this thing jumped into the cup, ate the few crickets, but he couldn't get back out. So
Perfect.
yeah, perfect. But now I got 2 other ones, and I'm like, well, I have hope again. So I keep a squeegee for cleaning my glass. I keep it up against the wall behind a little laundry basket I have down there. And, you know, the squeegee's like on a 45-degree angle. So I looked everywhere. I had my kids down there. We tore the whole place up, couldn't find it. But when I found that one a few days later, I was like, I'm looking at that squeegee setting up against the wall, and I'm like, wow, that little triangle would be a perfect hiding spot for baby Gilleneyes monitor. So I moved the squeegee, and the other 2 were there. So what a relief.
Yay.
Oh, man, what a relief.
That's incredible to find something that's 1 inch big like
It's
that.
literally tiny. And those things went on to be, you know, they went on to live a great life and be great breeders. And now my friend has them.
Fabulous. Very fabulous. So you have a podcast.
Yes.
And you use that platform mostly for talking about monitors or all reptiles, enrichment?
No,
what is your main focus
well,
there?
You know, I mean, I am a reptile enthusiast, and I keep, I keep a lot of snakes, and I keep a lot of monitor lizards. I keep fish. I keep a lot of stuff. But, you know, people kind of look to me for advice, like with monitor lizards. So the podcast is called All Monitor Talk Podcast on the Trap Talk Network. And, we mainly talk about breeding monitors, but we also get into, you know, the psychology of, you know, their brains and how to engage that brain and, you know, make them calm, comfortable captives, you know, because we're not doing these animals any favor, keeping them in in captivity. However, I think it's our job to provide them with such a good life that, you know, it's not so bad being in captivity. I mean, we feed them. Of course, if something were to happen to us and we never went down in our room again, surely they would perish. But, you know, as long as we're doing what we need to do, they should be living good, happy lives, never be afraid of you, never bounce off the walls. You know, that's up to us to engage the brain and teach them that we're good.
When I first started going to the jungle, like it was, I think, my 4th trip when I really changed it was my 4th trip. I really changed my thinking. At first, I would get out there and just have tears in my eyes looking around thinking how I wished my babies could go in those trees and be wild. And it didn't take me
Yes.
long to start having tears in my eyes, because those animals in the wild, they live a very harsh life. And so many things go wrong. I've seen such terrible things out there with whole groups of emeralds and individual emeralds that now I just wish I could bring them all home and spoil them. And if we are
Yep.
truly spoiling them, then I do believe that we can provide them with more love and enrichment. People think reptiles don't want love, so we'll call it enrichment and satisfaction. We can give them all of that in captivity if we do it correctly. And Mike, I just look up to you so much as an advocate for reptile enrichment. It's a beautiful thing to watch what you do.
Well, Amy, I got to say the same about you. I don't know a lot of people that go to the lengths that you do to actually make your animals comfortable and, thrive in captivity. Obviously everything around you that we're seeing right now is above and beyond. And since I was a little boy, people used to say to me, hey, you know that wild caught animal doesn't realize, he realizes that that's a fake plant. And my comeback was like, yeah, I mean, I'm not an idiot. I realize he knows it's not a real plant. And I'm sure he knows that the light bulb ain't the sun either. However, I do our best rather than an empty box with the half a log and a water dish. I want to provide them for more than that, for a stimuli for their brains, So anytime back in the day when I was younger, probably like in the 90s, people used to say to me all the time about, well, you're going to get bugs. And I'm like, well, you know what? If I get bugs, that's, I'll deal with that as we go. So like with my bioactive soil, people used to say to me, well, aren't you worried that you're going to have bugs crawling around your house? And, at first when I was a greenhorn, I really did think about that stuff. However, along with understanding your animals, you got to understand even that bioactive soil. And what happens is when you first put in a brand new load of bioactive dirt, there's more bioactivity than where they come from. So there's a huge population when I take that dirt from the wild and I bring it into the house. However, the way nature works is those animals only thrive to what's available to them. So when you start with this giant load of dirt there's bugs like literally everywhere. However, they soon start to die off because there's no more bird pooping on the pile of dirt. There's no more snakes pooping, and just all of that excess bioactivity that they no longer have to survive on. Your numbers dwindle to where there's only a population that your animals poop and, shed skins and uneaten food can sustain. So there's no chance of it running over and living in your carpet. It don't work that way.
If I pick up a rock in my tortoises live in a huge thing in my living room with caves and all
I
stuff.
see that.
And if I pick up one of those rocks, it's like you said, there are beetles, earwigs, all the things just scatter and run. And I tell Larry all the time, every time I get to see it all, or I go in the next day and pick up the leftover food, like, I don't know how these things aren't all over our house. But like you said, they're sustaining on the resources that they have in that space. And not because all my stuff's all open. I don't have doors on the animal stuff upstairs. It's just
right.
Is what it is. And it all stays in there. It's incredible.
Yep, it does. I mean, even back in the day, I was a huge roach breeder. Fear Factor used to buy, 20,000 roaches a month from me. And people are like, oh, they're going to infest your house. Trust me, my roaches were kept in a 90-degree room. When they got out into the 84-degree room, it was no longer paradise for them. And then when they get into the house where it's 75 degrees, they perish. So, yeah, you just got to understand everything.
Right. And Gabriel Ghost had a question. He wanted to know, how often do you feed the monitors? Are they a daily eater, like an iguana?
I do feed my monitors daily. However, it's a very tight rope that you have to walk with monitor lizards, because while they will eat every day, if you're feeding them prey like rodents that are very high in fat and caloric value, they soon put on a lot of fat bodies, which eventually leads to fatty liver and then renal failure. So I feed a lot of birds and bird eggs. There's really not a lot to them. However, I give them multiple birds, multiple eggs, and like cycling females, I feed them heavy every day. And my males eat every day, but they only eat like maybe one or two quails. So it's all depends on what you're trying to do with your animals. You could easily overfeed them, and unfortunately, I see it daily on the internet. Monitor lizards that are shaped like a football, and I try to tell people, and they're like, what do you know? And I'm like, dude, maybe you should Google my name, and and then they're like, oh, okay, well, what do you got to say? And I'm like, you're loving your animal to death. You're not doing that animal any favor by feeding it, rats 3 times a week. It's not good for them. And anytime a monitor lizard is shaped like a football, that tells you, and it tells me, that the fat stores that run along their back on either side of their spine are. So what happens in the wild is there's a time of feast and then there's a time of famine. So they eat. They build up these fat stores along their back. And when the bad times come, when the famine time comes, they live off of those fat stores. So when that gets them through the famine, and then when the time of plenty comes again, they start building back up on them fat stores. However, in captivity, they never hit that famine point, and those fat bodies just keep growing and growing and growing, and then that leads to fat in their liver. And once the fat gets in their liver, it shuts their kidneys down, and you have an animal with a way shortened life. So it's very important not to overfeed monitor lizards.
And we had another question from Morelia, would like to know, when you're collecting the earth from outside, all of that beautiful smelling, luscious earth from your in-laws' farm, have you ever had any trouble with mites or other unwanted pests?
Nope, never.
Me neither.
Never. I've never had mites. As a matter of fact, I think the bioactivity in the soil, like I said, it's pretty well almost subterranean. So they're working and operating at a level that mites and other parasitic animals, ticks and mites, they're looking for a host, and they're not going to find a host living in a pile of dirt. So again, I think it's very important to take off the top of the pile that I use, and you got to get into what's already decomposing. And it's literally like if you went to New Guinea and you scooped up some forest floor, it's the same thing. It's all hardwood trees that have fell, and they're breaking down over, many, many thousands of years. And it becomes, like humus, you know what I mean? So it's very light and smells beautiful. And literally, I want to get this point across to people. It's not the farm where my in-laws live. It's most towns anywhere you live in the United States, which you got to be careful for, pollution and pesticides and stuff. But most towns in the United States have a collection place at the park district or whatever, where when you have organic waste, like mulch that you put around your flower beds, or when somebody has a tree broke down in their backyard, after a storm or whatever, the town comes in and chips it all up, and they bring it to this park district area, or what, you got to figure it out where you live. But if you go there and you find that pile, like I say, 90% of the towns have it, And like I said, you work the top off of it. You get down into the stuff that's breaking down. You can have your own too. You don't have to go to a special farm or anything. You just have to make sure there's no factories or, maybe pesticides in that area. But if you dig into it and it's warm because it's decomposing and there's animals living in it, like the workhorses, and you smell it and it smells like the outside, like a forest after the rain, you're good to go. That's good stuff.
I love that smell. When I water my enclosures upstairs, this whole house smells like the desert right before it rains. Being from Tucson, I love that smell so much.
Oh, me too. I love it.
He says that they also use earth from their garden outside, and it works really good for them. But like you said, it's very important to smell it, because you can smell if something ain't right, you can smell it. So you smell that.
If it doesn't smell like your backyard after a rain, I wouldn't use it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mike, we're going to wrap up, and I just want to ask you a couple questions before we go, with quick answers. And one of them is, what do you've mentioned quite a few things here, but to just kind of sum it up, over the last, say, 5 years, or really, since what have you changed your mind on? It doesn't have to be 5 years, but however back, something you thought was one way and you're like, whoa, this is better this way.
I'd say probably in the last 10 years, I've really come to realize how important it is to get your animal's brain engaged. So, like you said, enrichment and in positive reinforcements, and just to make them feel comfortable, bold, and secure, and to, work out any of that stress that captivity brings to them. So that's very important for me.
Awesome. We are on the same page about many things, and I would say that's probably the one we share the most passion about. And the last question I want to ask before we go out, well, the very last question is going to be what you want people to take away. But is there an animal out there that you would love to keep that you've not yet had in your possession? I know what mine is.
Yeah, there's a lot, but I guess being the idiot I am, my main goal, I would love to have a cassowary.
And is that a type of monitor?
No, that's that big blue-headed murder bird from New Guinea.
Oh, a bird. Do you have birds?
Yeah. No, it's a flightless bird, so it's more like a dinosaur than a bird.
Oh, yes, I have seen that online. Those are very prehistoric looking. How amazing.
I just posted one on my Mike Stefani Facebook page. It's just an amazing animal, of course, very dangerous.
That's where I saw
something that's a fantasy animal for me.
What's that fella's name on Harry Potter that kept the animals?
I'm not a big
I don't remember, but yes,
sci-fi fan or whatever that is.
He kept some amazing sci-fi type of animals, and that one definitely seems like one.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, before we take off here, Mike, I know I'm going to go ahead and use the word preached. We have preached enrichment here today. Thank you all for listening to our words on enrichment. So important. Is there any last final thing you would like to throw out there to get an extra word?
I guess getting into my old age, I just want to say, with the current state of the world, just be kind to people, smile at people. You're probably not going to get a smile back, but that, it starts by one person. Just be kind, smile, and, embrace life.
And to do those things for ourselves and not expect a response, because like you said, somebody may not smile back, and so what? We get the joy out of being the one who smiled. So I love that.
Absolutely.
Mike, thank you so
Absolutely.
much for being here with me today. I just love chatting with you, and it's just so cool that we had planned to chat a while back and never got the chance, and now we got to chat here with all of our beautiful friends. Thank you all so much for being here today.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say much love and respect to you and Larry. It was a pleasure meeting Larry after I've met you, and he's a lucky man.
Thank you. And we'll be seeing you at Tinley again here in October.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Mike. Good night.
Yep.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Bye
Thank
now.
you so much for coming.
Bye, guys.
Under neon lights so cold they hum, shadows of scales where whispers come. A world of emeralds and tales untold, chasing the warmth in a world so cold. Happy basins we rise and glow, charmed roses stories the world should know. Emerald dreams in a twilight sky, together we thrive as the days go by. Amy speaks with a voice so kind, spreading the knowledge to ease the mind. Through winding paths, scales and lore, a brighter world we all explore. Happy Basins.